My name's Luke. I'm Head of Policy and Research at the British Association of Social Workers, BASW. We have just under 21,000 members, but many more social workers actually access our resources on our website. Between 2009 and 2016, I was privileged to be doing direct work as a social worker with care-experienced young people. And they taught me a great deal, both individually and collectively. And I'm very grateful for that. And that process continues with colleagues on either side who challenge me and educate me. And part of that work is recording, and the recording that we do can serve many purposes. And one of them is accountability. To whom, you might ask? Well, primarily to management and ultimately the Minister and Ofsted. I'm not saying that's right, I'm saying that's how it works, right? And that accountability is demonstrating that you as a social worker have done the right thing at the right time. The danger with that recording for accountability, covering your backside, is that it pushes out all other forms of recording, including the kind of recording which is so essential for people who may want to access those records in terms of their identity anyway. And my own organisation, BASW, has been running a campaign called 80/20, and our calculation is that 80% of social work time is spent doing paperwork, not paperwork anymore, screen work, and that's increasingly taken over from direct face-to-face work with service users, which is bad for social workers and it's bad for service users. And there are several possible reasons why this has happened, but I think one is that the recording for accountability takes over and slowly it slips into a form of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which I suffer from a little bit, but you look at files and it says, rang Mrs. X at, 10 minutes later, rang Mrs. X again, no reply, rang Mrs. X again, no reply, rang Mrs. X, reply. And then the manager comes along the corridor and says, have you rung Mrs. X? Yes, ring her again. Okay. So organisations suffer from OCD as well. So I make the distinction between good recording and bad recording. And good recording fills a range of functions, including the records that care-experienced people need after they have left care. And good recording isn't necessarily more recording, more work for frontline colleagues, but it well may be a different recording. It's also important to say something about austerity, cuts. We use that terminology a lot and it can kind of wash over us. It means 1.5 million people in the UK, population bigger than the city of Birmingham, using food banks. It means climbing over people in the walk from Euston Station to Euston Square down to here because they're street homeless. What does it mean in social work services? I'll give you an example. When I arrived at my local authority, there was a wonderful person called Sarah. Sarah was an unqualified social worker. She said, "I'm here, Luke, to do life story work." So we went and met with 2 young women, and in their own voice, they asked Sarah what they wanted to know about their life. And Sarah worked with them to produce a life story work. Now that implies a document that's quite short. This was not a short document. This was the sort of biography that you find in Dylan's Over the Road. It was 120 pages. It had pictures, it had websites, it had the voices of the girls. And on the basis of that, they were from another part of the UK, I'll keep their anonymous. They then went with their foster carer and they went and visited the home that they were brought up in, and they met family members that they didn't know. And then Sarah recorded all of that in the book. It was great. And then thought, okay, what happens next? And then Sarah's post was deleted. So that's what cuts and austerity mean in social work services. But I'm delighted that Victoria will be distilling all the wisdom of the MIRRA project, including the wisdom of care experienced people, into some practice guidance. And we need to get that approved by my relevant committee. But we can then share that all with our members as a resource, and it will mirror the resource being developed by the Care Leavers Association, and it will also mirror other resources like we've just heard about. So that people can find all of these things in one place. And finally, I personally wanted to thank Victoria and the team, all of you. I know that you've all played a big role in that, but leaders make a difference, And it seems to me that the work that MIRRA has been doing is a kind of paradigm of what good research should be. It's relevant. You read research and you think, what difference does this make? It's not the case with this. It's timely. It's engaged with a huge number of stakeholders. And most important, it's put service users at the centre. So thank you for that.
Thank you to all the panel. I'd like to ask the person from Family Connect a question, but before I do, I'd just like to say thank you, Jackie, for sharing your story. It's very powerful and very moving, so thank you very much for that. So you talked about collaboration. I was just going to ask you, how do people collaborate? How do they contribute to what you're doing?
Talk to us. That's the first thing. So I'm sure as a result of this, we could send out contact details for Family Action and the Family Connect project. I want this to be a collaboration, and I want it to grow over time. So work with us.
Just to add to that, sorry, we have had a conversation as well about having a workshop with the MIRRA research team around the Family Connect resource once there is a model available to look at. So we'll continue hopefully planning that for some time in the near future.
Great, thank you.
First Linda and then to Pat.
Hi, Victoria will probably feel like strangling me because it's my hobby horse. Now, you gave a really good example of life story work. For me, life story work was the social worker sitting me down, telling me what I was going to write, what colour pens I was going to use, what I was going to draw, what photos were going to go in there, and it was absolutely useless. But if it's done well, then it could have been a really positive thing for me. And then when I went to the children's home, they tried to start it off for me again, but I think I'd had such a rubbish experience, I didn't want to re-engage. So what can be done to change that? Because if good life story work is done through the course, a lot of this need for kids to want to read their files would not be necessary. And I know this is something that Darren feels quite strongly about, that if it's done well, right through the life course, a lot of these problems could be evaded, but it has to be done well, and it has to be done in a way that a child can connect and feel it's their own story, not that of the social workers, although they have to be there to help. So that's, I don't know if that's a statement or a question.
I think there might be two types of life story work. I think one type of life story work is quite kind of psychotherapeutic.
Yeah.
You know, what did you mean when you said that?
But it wasn't
I
even
wanted,
that. I mean, it was just,
I,
you're like this.
I wanted a cup of coffee. There's nothing more to read into it. And I think that kind of therapeutic work is very skilled work, and I think if it's done well, it's very powerful. I think if it's done badly, it feels quite intrusive and hurtful. Yeah, you know, I kind of went through supervision like that as a social worker, you know, kind of trying to be psychoanalyzed by my supervisor. This is a long time ago. The life story work that Sarah did wasn't therapeutic.
No, but it sounds amazing. If I heard about that,
It was biography. It was people talking about themselves, and then and Sarah then recording that faithfully in a way that you might do a biography of a pop star or a footballer or Kim Kardashian or whoever. What did you do? What did you think? Where did you live? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And, you know, that's a different kind of life story work. And I think, you know, in later life, that kind of biographical stuff is kind of really useful, because you can look back on it and think, oh, well, when so-and-so did something, actually I didn't really understand because I was, you know, 10, but I can understand that a little bit more now. It's kind of more factual and fact-based.
It could be a box. It could be going to places.
Could be a
We're very
box.
fixed on this book idea.
Yeah.
Which for a child can feel very like, oh God, more homework. You know, I'm just only day at school. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a book necessarily.
And photos. I mean, that's why I like Sarah's book, because it had so many pictures in it.
What photos were going to go in there?
Yeah.
There wasn't even a photograph of my family, I don't think. There was not a photograph of my mum, dad, me, brother at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got to be more what's the word? More creative.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, do you want to follow up?
You're talking about collaboration, and David, you said you used to be the chief exec for BAF. I didn't think we use foster carers enough to take a lead in life story work, when I think that for many children in care, they're the key people that can really help with this. And I think we could start to do something with that. And I think there's something going on in Wales where they're looking at life story work, and I think asking foster carers to kind of take a lead in this. I'm not too sure exactly of the details, but I know there's something leading going on there. So I'm just kind of wondering, is that something you've thought about in terms of working in collaboration, and how we bring the network around a child together, because we are all guardian angels of a childhood's memories, and how we come together and protect childhood memories in that way.
I think that's really interesting. For me, Family Connect can develop as we want it to. So, you know, obviously, given my experience, I've seen some really good examples of life story work over the years. You know, BAF has provided training on life story work. It's something that we do in Family Action now. But our knowledge develops all the time, doesn't it? And there's new initiatives. You're talking about foster carers and the approach there. The point is recognizing that the key to this is creativity, and it's trying to find ways to share brilliant practice. So, you know, I don't know, could Family Connect have a what's new page or something, you know, or a resources for professionals, or, you know, just a discussion page or something that would be a way to highlight brilliant practice, it can't provide all the answers itself, but it could be just a platform, a central resource to say, this is going on. Find out, you can find out more by following this link. I think that's the idea. It's about sharing brilliant practice rather than having the answer for everything.
So one of the things in the MIRRA project that we were looking at is, and we're hoping to get follow-on funding, but it's not guaranteed at this time, is we're looking with one of the systems providers, because we would like to have a kind of co-created system that the social workers put data in, but others also put data in. And there is a foster care dimension to what is being looked at in that regard. And I think others in the audience, I don't know if anyone else does want to speak, are also considering that concept about the system creation and trying to have this first principle, this co-created record through time, but getting the systems developers to help. So one of the foster carers said to us they would like to be able to then deposit information regularly into some kind of system. Yeah.
I know Pam's had her hand up before. Is it anything to do with life story work or the systems? System. I will come to Joanne and then we'll come to you, I promise.
In Australia, some new foster carers have actually developed a system called Caring Life. They were appalled when they did their training and were told, how do we keep all this stuff? It's going to be digital. And we're told, scrapbooks, photo albums. And so they've actually built a system which is like a digital system. They're IT developers, it's like. So, and to see they're starting to trial that in some of the agencies in Australia, but essentially to provide the foster carers with that infrastructure to do that work. What's great about it is that it will move with the child through their placements. So they've really thought through those issues. It's like it's not the agency system, it's the child system. And if they change carers, then that it moves with them. Yeah.
We'll go. I don't want to try patience any further.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Pam Hodgkins. I was the founder of NORCAP, and I'd like to just pick up on something that Darren said about adopted people having legal rights to information, because of course the actual legal right that most adopted people have to information, in fact, is solely that information that will enable them to buy their original or to obtain their original birth certificate. All the wonderful regulations around information that adopted people are entitled to as they grow up is actually relevant to what are called the post-commencement adoptions, people that have been adopted under the new framework from the 2002 Act onwards. And the vast majority of people that will ever be adopted in this country were actually adopted between 1926 and 2006. And their rights to information, I'm not saying good practice hasn't developed in many, many places, but their rights to information are almost effectively non-existent. They get information, but in the same way as care leavers may get good information, may get absolutely appalling information, and likewise they experience the same redaction over information and being told what you can and can't have, including it seems that if you are living in the south of England, you will get quite a lot of information, and you will probably be told the name that your mother might have told the agency of your father. If you are living in the north of England, you won't get that information. That has to be taken out of the documents. I don't know why. Obviously, there's a dividing line somewhere from the Severn to the Wash or something, and once you get over there, we're obviously not to be trusted.
Can I just add to that? I'm sorry, I'm Julia Feast. But I just wanted to add that the difference between care and adoption is that adopted people do not have rights to the information apart from access to their information on their birth certificate. So if they want to see their records, they have no right, but over time, because we've learned from listening to doctor people at birth rates, that people do have a need and a right to get information, but it's the agency's discretion. So under data protection, they cannot demand that they have that information. Adopted parents the same. So that's a big difference. But we work very well. I think we do work very well. And I do think, I wouldn't say just north and south. I think, in my experience, agencies have become far more open and really want to help people because we know it's right. People need to know about themselves. So.
Come to Heather.
I've got this,
Yes,
so
you've
shall I
got
speak
that,
into this? I just wanted to talk about collaboration and systems. We moved on slightly from that. And one of my real interests as an archivist, I look a long way back, but I also look a long way forward. And what we're very keen to do is work with system providers of social care systems to make sure that the records that are being created now will be available for the next 7,500 years. And we're actually working on a project, there's 11 local authorities working together, I'm helping with that, in order to make sure that the records that are created now will be available for people and accessible for them to look at in the future. And if there are collaborations going on in that field, I'm really very keen to get involved. So it's looking for successors, but we do care about that as archivists. We're very passionate about that. So that's one of the things we're keen to help with. Thank you.
So we have any other questions? Comments? Okay, we'll go Karen, isn't it Karen? Yes, and then back to Julia. Could you pass it all along the row?
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm in the Leaving Care Service in Stockport. Just picking up on a couple of comments, Darren, from what you were saying before. Firstly, about language. You know, there's quite a lot of discussion going on at the moment about language, and I absolutely agree with you. But since the 2000 Act, we've had these terms of relevant and former relevant. You know, that it doesn't make any sense. I'm just keen to know whether you've had any suggestions of different sort of language which is being sort of put forward, you know, while you're lobbying, because that's something that's going on for looked after children as well. So there was that. In terms of you talking about, you know, corporate parenting responsibilities, I've been doing a piece of work in my council with our care experienced engagement worker, and we've interviewed all out with our chief execs, our corporate directors, and asked the question, when does corporate parenting end? And they've all said, it doesn't end. So I think you'll be pleased to hear that, you know, it is possible for councils to sort of have that commitment, a lifelong commitment. And finally, while you've been doing your lobbying and, you know, and activism around access to records, have you found any good examples of, you know, local authorities who have got some good processes and publicity and everything?
So, going backwards, yes, we have found some local authorities that are very good at doing it. One very close to you is Wigan Council, for example. So they have a data protection team, and the data protection officers in that team are very well versed when it comes to social care. So if you apply for your file to Wigan Council, you will be taken through a process that is fully supportive, and them data protection officers will pick up the phone and give you a call and ask you if there's any support you need above and beyond the access to records process. And if there's any signposting that they need to give, they will give that. And if you was in Brett's situation, you wouldn't just simply get a letter saying, sorry, there's no information on you, you didn't exist. They would do their best to try to signpost you to where other information could possibly be found. And I could go through more and more examples. So there are many examples out there that we can learn from. In terms of the corporate parenting principle, it's great to know, yes, in Stockport, that you are a care leaver throughout your life, and you can go back to your local authority for support. However, that isn't the case across the country and in many local authorities. In fact, I can give you examples of data protection officers that have asked me the question, why does that care leaver at that age need to go back and start looking at that kind of information? Why is it still important to them? There's an expectation that you should have moved on from care. You should have gone into independent life and become an adult and gone through life without being concerned about your time in care. Well, hey, which other child gets told, forget about your childhood? No. Why, if you've been in the care system, do you need to forget about your childhood? No. You're not going to forget about your parents. You're not going to forget about the fact that there is somebody that you should be able to go back to throughout your life to ask for support in terms of accessing the information that they hold about you. Hey, in my case, if you don't want to hold my information anymore, then I'm happy days for you to destroy it. Just make sure you give me a full copy of it, and then you can go ahead and destroy it, and me and you don't need to have a relationship no more. And I'm sure there are many, many care leavers of my age and older and younger that feel the same way. But as it stands, we're not allowed to ask for them files to be destroyed. For some reason, they feel like they need to keep hold of that file, even though it's completely irrelevant to social work practice because I've got no relationship with them. So if you're going to keep hold of it, then be responsible and give me access to it and support the access. And in terms of, what was the first question, sorry? The language. We don't have, through the campaign and lobbying, in terms of anything for an alternative language. We just think that as care leavers, we should be treated in a way which demonstrates that we once had and are still entitled to a relationship with the local authority in terms of our time in your care. And I was trying to make the point in terms of the language of data subject and data controller, which suggests sometimes there's almost the verses. If you are someone that's grown up in the care system and 30 years have elapsed, and then you go back to the local authority, if your relationship with the local authority was a bit fraught when you was in care all them years ago, and all of a sudden you're speaking to a bureaucrat who treats you as a subject and makes you think that they're in control of you and your decisions to access your files and what information you can have, that relationship is what's wrong. So the language is demonstration of a very negative and a very versus and a very defensive process and relationship. And I think that's the point I was trying to make in terms of the use of language. And I tried to use the Leaving Care Act as an example of actually the atrocious language used to suggest that some people are more or less relevant. It's just ridiculous that we would speak about people in the care system in such a way. I don't have an alternative language to kind of relate to you, but I do think the way in which we kind of use language in legislation presents a discourse, and that discourse can present a particular slant to a relationship, and it can be quite off-putting to a care leaver when they come back to the local authority and seek to kind of rebuild that relationship, whether that be accessing files or for whatever other reason. I'm not sure if that answers all of your questions, but I did try my hardest there. The Care Leavers Quality Mark. Yeah, so the Care Leavers Association have got a quality mark called the Clear Mark. Thus far, in the last maybe 12 years of that being available, I think about 4 local authorities have taken it up. But actually, that's a set of 7 standards which is put together by care leavers in consultation with care leavers many years ago. They came up with 7 criteria in terms of raising awareness that you could access your files, making that awareness publicly available, offering support, etc. You can see all of that on the website of the Care Leavers Association, and there is a form you can fill out which suggests that you are living up to them criteria and standards within that quality mark as a local authority. And then we would, as an organisation, which is member-led by care leavers, present a certificate that you can put on your website that demonstrates to care leavers, if you want to come and access your files from this council, we have a particular standard by which we follow the access to records process. And we would hope that that would give care leavers more confidence to then go back to the local authority and say, hey, I want to apply for my files, and I know that you're an authority that will completely support me through that process. Thank you, Peter.
Hello. I was just wondering, so I think one of you talked about the DPA 2018 not being fit for purpose in these kind of scenarios, in providing access to all the information that people want, and without having something else in place, or while we're campaigning for something else to come into place, that is there, either through the MIRRA project or any of the collaborations, is there a look towards, as well as providing help for care leavers in accessing their records and help for the people creating the records, for those of us who are providing that access down the road, would there be some guidance around things like redactions and what's appropriate, what we can get away with leaving in? Because a lot of the time it is risk averse, and the person doing the redactions might actually want to leave a lot more in, but knowing that you still work for an organisation. Thank you.
I think, actually, if you look on the Information Commissioner's Office website, if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, there is some guidance that suggests you can use your discretion in terms of redaction, and that discretion can be used in the enabling framework, which is the Data Protection Act. The Data Protection Act is there to enable people to access, not to be used by local authorities defensively, to restrict access. And that guidance on the ICO website is there to demonstrate, as a local authority data protection officer, you have your discretion to use in terms of what you should or what you shouldn't redact. And I think that guidance is there to support you, to say, actually, if you do make them decisions to redact information, so long as you follow due process in terms of determining what to and what not to redact, ICO are not going to come down and fine your local authority as long as you can demonstrate due process in the process. Sorry, there you go.
No, so that's really is important to say. We are trying to put together and build on, so there's this book available and that Julia's written, and that's got some really helpful case studies. Building on that book and linking into it, because we're not going to rewrite case studies that exist, we're also building up some further case studies. There's a couple in your packs, but the intention is to build up some guidance. The Commissioner, as you saw, came in today, and the idea would be to try and give people greater levels of direction, to run that past the data protection team, to try and have a contact in ICO who is more experienced. So that we've spoken to the Commissioner, and we hope we'll have a contact who is more experienced at them working with the different authorities on this particular area, because we feel it merits that particular specialism and context and contact. But we hope that our guidance, connecting in, so it may seem like there's a lot of different organisations, but I think that's really helpful in getting different voices. We're all connected, and the family connect is really important. But the guidance should look at trying to give you better steers on how to do good redaction, where there might be examples to redact. And so we're working from the people that have been interviewed to try and better signpost that. So I know Isa, who's down the front here, Gloucester, who are working with us. I don't know if you want to say anything, Isa, your hand blew up.
Sorry, thank you, Elizabeth. The only thing I was going to say is it's worth noting that the Information Commissioner has never fined or issued any sort of punitive action against anybody for an error of judgment while processing a subject access request. And I think that a lot of that fear is just being generated by organisations as opposed to coming formally, either under legislation or under guidance. And the other thing I want to say quickly is I did challenge the Information Commissioner about issuing some proper guidance, and that the legislation is so overarching. You have practitioners at the grassroots level, and there has to be something in the middle. And she said she heard what I was saying.
I did get Isa to come out with me to follow as far as we could to the door. But she is working with us. I think slightly what you're saying is about your organisation, though. So the reason to have the ICO stamp on it isn't just about the ICO and what they're going to do. It's about what you fear your organisation might do. That guidance is also going to better flag the case law, because when the cases have come up, the judges have fallen on the side of the individual, not the organisation, and that's the way that the redaction needs to be done and documented so that you're accountable for obviously what you release. But, we are working on that guidance to better empower the individuals doing that job. So partly what the MIRRA project has done is it's created this stronger evidence base of good practice and bad practice. Sorry, there's other people that are desperate to speak.
I know.
It's so frustrating.
I know.
Yeah.
So, so just, can I give you the microphone in a second, Trish, to talk about how you do it?
Yeah.
How you do it? Okay, just a couple of things just to flag first of all in terms of support. This might not be guidance, which is, ICO stamped, but I really do recommend Julia and Leonie's book, which is published by Core and BAF on access to records, and there are copies at the desk, sale price of £5 today, if you want one. This is very comprehensive, and although it's from 2016, so it predates GDPR and the 2018 Act, it did anticipate the changes that were going to happen and is still entirely relevant. The other thing I have found very useful, I know there is the Post Care Forum, which meets regularly usually in London. Yeah, which is a group of practitioners who are working in access to records and who provide a lot of support and guidance to one another in terms of how to kind of build up cases for, you know, particularly like, oh my goodness.
So we have hit our time.
Post-care forum.
So are you going to give Trish the last word? Yeah. And then...
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Isa and I and other people who are involved in the Post-Care Forum. We're also involved with campaign. I would so endorse, please buy, if you're preparing records, please buy the guidance, because it was backed by the ICO. And if you want, you know, your employers to feel less concerned, then they can read it.
Yeah.
And the website, there's an Access to Records campaign group website that has a load of information on it. And certainly from Bernardo's and other organisations, we always talk to people. What do they know about their own history? Because that will enable you to be saying, okay, they already know this. And they have every right to know who is in their family. And all the reasons why. We work from the basis of whatever the reason was for them coming into care, that story is crucial. And major decisions that happen to somebody through their period in care, they have to know that. And they have to know, you know, who made those decisions. Gosh.
So we're going to thank our panel, and we're going to have a closing remarks session. So there's one short session, but we should say thank you to everyone who's been on this panel.
I wanted to really just say thank you, particularly to everybody who's here and all of you who've contributed in so many ways. Some specific thanks. I need to thank our funders. If we didn't have any money, we wouldn't be able to do lots of these things. So the research project, which was funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, UCL Innovation and Enterprise, who funded the film, and UCL Impact and Engagement, who funded the art and the various other activities during the day. I also want to say a huge thank you to our partners, particularly to the Care Leavers Association, with whom we've worked from the very beginning. Also to Family Action, BASW, Archives and Records Association, and there are many other parties as well. I want to say a really big thank you to all the research contributors and our co-research group. So I've got Emmanuel, John George, Brett, Sam, Jackie, Darren, Gina, Linda, Rosie, Isa, Andy. I hope I haven't left anybody off that list. And everybody who made today possible. So Tabitha, thank you for the wonderful plaque. And Helena and Florence for helping and for the artwork. And as I say, most of all, to all of you for attending and contributing. Feedback postcards are in your packs. We would be delighted if you would be willing to spend your last 30 seconds in the room filling in the few questions on the back and then leaving them with us today, so on the front here or outside. Yeah. You've heard a little bit about some of our future plans, and we hope to be able to go on doing some of this work and to share some of the work with our various parties, to work further with some of the policy agencies. And we're hoping to have a joint all-parliamentary group meeting in the autumn. We're still trying to organise a date for that. There is so much more to be done, and I hope that we'll be able to work with many of you in a continuing fashion into the future. I should thank my colleagues, Elizabeth, Andy, Anna, and most of all, Victoria. So thank you all so much.